Welcome to Rare Bloom. Very thankful for everyone that's joined us. It's been a very fun year working on how to establish Rare as a brand in connection to events and how we can help consult artists on the blockchain from the traditional world, in addition to a trade partner show, or a trade show partner network. I'm very happy to have my friends Doug Kacena and Brendan O'Connell join me today, and we're going to chat about contemporary art and the impact that blockchain will have to the space. And so first off, we'll just kick it off with introductions. So I'll go first. My name is Wes Parkinson. One of the founders of Rare Bloom and a founder of Rare. I think through my course of Web3 experience and investing, I've really honed in on contemporary art and NFTs, how they bridge the physical art with the digital art world. And beyond that, how the collector experience I would say is significantly different and just as entertaining as collecting physical art. And through that, I've met some great friends and partners to help on some NFT releases on the Cardano blockchain. So we'll be speaking about those today. And I'd like to introduce artists that we're representing, named Zhang Wan. He's one of the most prolific Chinese artists alive today, and he'll be joining us on Cardano here. So we'll kick things off with a greeting from Zhang Wan.
大家好，我是张环，特别荣幸、特别高兴呢，我们的 Space Flower 项目今年能参加 Cardano Real Bloom 大会，这对我们来讲是非常荣幸的。Space Flower 呢，我们研发了2年，这个项目的核心是关于人类灵魂不灭、情感永存的这么一个核心概念。由于疫情原因，我和团队不能亲自到场跟我们区块链和大会的朋友们去分享我们的项目，但是我们请了我们的丹佛的这个项目总监 Wes 先生会亲自到场，为大家分享 Space Flower 这个项目。最后呢，预祝大会圆满成功。感谢所有的为大会做出贡献、努力的所有的朋友们，拜拜。
So you may have seen some flat screens throughout the venue displaying Zhang's career as well as the upcoming collection for Space Flower. So it is a profile picture collection that really touches on life, death, and love. It's about a group of those that unfortunately have passed and entered the afterlife, and their quest to be resurrected into a new form and into the best form. Where the love that comes in is it's a family in which they're trying to get the youngest child to basically be resurrected with very Tibetan elements, I would say. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a quick touch on Zhang Wan and his past art, what he's accomplished, and then from there we'll get into the fireside chat here.
Zhang Wan is passionate about Buddhist philosophy, the cycles of life and death.
这个其实是讲的人类，它的原初意是讲的人类生命在现实世界的一种生存状态。
Highly sensitive to matter, he works with water, blood, ice, and ashes in provocative performances that push his own physical and psychological limits.
那么，我觉得迪奥的雷雷迪奥的这个精神所在，它是一个超越现实、超越我们对这个包包的这个本身的这个理念，它已经是一个跨界的东西。
A multiple creative vision, from immobility to movement, illustrative of rebirth, linking the world of the living and the dead, a new breath of life.
So I'm honored to take part in Space Flower as the project director on the Cardano side. We'll begin working on this project and how to onboard and build a community within Cardano and inform folks on what kind of art we can bring beyond just the new digital art and the Web3 trending art right now, which, don't get it twisted, I'm extremely compassionate about that as well and have an insane amount of monkey picture PFPs as well. With that said, I'll go ahead and pass it to Doug, who's going to introduce Victor Fresso. Many of you have noticed, I think it's unavoidable, the beautiful sculptures that we have in the corner of the venue, and Doug can touch on that further.
Well, thank you. It's really an honor to be here, in conversation about where this intersection between contemporary art, NFT, and technology all engages. I was speaking with one of my friends yesterday. There's another conference in town that's speaking about, to the art world, about how technology is shifting that dialogue. And he was speaking to a bunch of artists and art world people about NFT, and then here I am today speaking to a bunch of NFT and tech people about contemporary art. It's really interesting to me that this is where we're at right now in this dialogue. I'm a contemporary art dealer. I own an art gallery here in Denver called K Contemporary, and we represent artists from all over the world, including Victor Fresso, who Victor is if you noticed out in the entrance here, there's an army of these large kind of childish baby men sculpture. Victor is an artist from Bratislava in Slovakia, and he really is a rock star out there. He does 3-story tall monumental sculptures. He's shown all over the world, and as a matter of fact, that army, which he calls the Birth of Niemann, which is all about ego, has been shown in museums in Prague and Berlin and Brussels and at Art Basel in Basel, Switzerland as well. So we're really excited to have that physical sculpture here as we're also talking about Victor's leap on the Cardano platform into the world of NFT and how we kind of bridge those gaps in the contemporary art world between the physical and the digital.
Hello, my name is Victor Fresso. Greetings from my studio in Bratislava, the capital city of Slovakia, small Middle European country. I'm conceptual artist represented by K Contemporary Gallery in Denver, especially Mr. Kacena. And this is my first NFT project ever, and I'm so excited to announce launch of Niemann. So, my sculpture Niemann, it's about me. It's a self-portrait. I'm working with negative emotion, negative feeling, in negative behavior. And this is about me. I'm looking for myself during process to making sculpture. So, it's a self-portrait. Cardano blockchain, let me thank to Cardano blockchain platform, and I want to say hello to everybody at Red Bloom conference in Colorado. Hi!
we'll pass it over to Brendan.
Hi, my name is Brendan O'Connell, and I'm a painter, contemporary artist. I spent 10 years inside Walmarts, as you see up there on an image, and I became known as the guy who got thrown out of more Walmarts than most New Yorkers had ever been in. And my mission or idea was that I'm going to do a series of paintings and try to make beautiful things out of what people would consider the least artistic place on earth. And however, it is the most curated place on earth in many ways. And because so many aesthetic decisions go into a display. And I keep thinking about how the idea of making art about a place and people, and most of the people who go to Walmart, at least when I started, had never been to a contemporary art museum or a gallery. And how is art going to communicate with people who don't actually go to where art is? And I found that an interesting question, and I feel like that's something we're exploring with NFTs, and it's something Doug and I have been talking about. How do we bring art to the people and bring the people to art? And before I painted these Walmart paintings, I was a portrait artist in Paris and in the south of France. And I was very connected to the idea of connecting to someone directly with a painting. And while it was a commercial exercise, I tried to make an aesthetic experience out of it. And I feel like, you know, the Walmarts and Wes having me come paint here live is very natural to me, since I spent a lot of time directly painting people and engaging with people while I was doing stuff. And the Walmart project had this democratic idea of bringing what was formerly the secret processes of what happens in a studio to the aisle of a grocery store. So that's the overview.
Yeah, and I think our origin story of how we all got to know one another is probably a really good place to start this conversation. As a collector, I've found it pretty fascinating how easily you can reach out to artists minting on NFTs, whether it be there's new attention on it, there may be less of an audience and more opportunity to build out a new community. And through that understanding, I've been able to get in touch with Zhang, Brendan, Doug, and really all go down different paths to get more hands-on and involved in a space that, for myself, doesn't have much experience other than collecting and interest, and then a past small experience in collecting physical art. So reaching out to those that have had multi-decade careers and are professionals in the art world, I've got to gain a lot of good insight. I think I first was introduced to Brendan on like a Reddit post on Cardano's subreddit. And I clicked on it, and I believe it was your website, and I just read through it all, and it kind of blew my mind, because it was the first time I found a traditional physical artist minting on Cardano, not only minting physical pieces or pictures of physical paintings, but then you'd also go and do some digital editing at the end there. From that, I think, Brendan, you were the first artist I really reached out to. Fast forward a year, we're planning Rare Bloom. There's this serious commitment from my side to make the art experience unique in a way where it's more so focused on the traditional world, joining the Web3 space rather than the reverse. And I happened to be in a panic trying to work something out with Zhangwan Studios, whether it be an exhibition at a museum or a local gallery in parallel to Rare Bloom. And that's when I happened to call Doug on his off day, and he picked up the phone at his gallery, and that has brought us on stage together. It's been a really amazing experience, and getting to know Doug better here, getting some attachment to the local Denver art scene, and I think this is just the beginning of something that's going to probably ultimately change the Cardano's NFT space. We're young, and we have a lot to add on as far as what's trending from the NFT side. And then that brought us to Victor, and ultimately coming to an agreement where we were able to get these sculptures for everyone's enjoyment. But I think what is on everyone's mind is how contemporary art will be affected by NFTs, and that'll be our discussion today. I know, Brendan, you've been trying to wrap your head around it, how we go about actually bringing you back on and starting to mint more paintings, and then Doug bringing your artists like Victor on board. So what do you think the effects will be on contemporary art from the NFT standpoint and blockchain technology? That's to you, Doug.
Well, sure. I was just asked, should I start with what is contemporary art? And you know, that's a really good question. Contemporary art for me, well, first of all, as far as medium, it can be from anything. So art itself is defined by the fact that we're naming it as art. And really interesting contemporary art for me starts with aesthetics. It seduces you into having a conversation about things that are maybe challenging for us to have conversations around otherwise. So I work with artists from all over the globe who are looking at ideas of identity. One of my artists who's really blowing up right now, her conversations are around post-colonialism, about the idea of otherizing. I have a performance artist, Carlos Martial from Cuba, who does work all around his body where he puts himself in very uncomfortable situations like piercing flags through his skin and through his shoulders. He just recently had a performance piece at the Guggenheim Museum. To Victor Fresho, whose work is all about ego and how do we look at our own selves and through this projection of sculpture. So it can be incredibly vast, but for me, the thing that really makes good contemporary art is when it invites you into having a longer conversation. The art is asking us to be present. It's asking us to be self-aware. It's asking us to question what our feelings are that are coming up from it. You know, even looking at Maurizio Catalan's, you know, banana that got so much attention here recently, instead of asking why is this hard or how does this work in the dialogue, maybe we should be asking ourselves, like, why does it piss me off that somebody paid $150,000 for a duct taped banana? You know, these are the bigger questions that when we stay with the art and when we stay present with it, starts coming up for us. Why does this remind me of home? Why do I hate the fucking color blue? Whatever those questions are. And that's what really good contemporary art does, is asks us to stay with that and then start discovering these inner dialogues that can connect us as people. And, you know, this is where I think this space of Web3 and NFT is a really engaging space, because there's also this issue of accessibility that we have, and I think it carries over between the NFT platform and the contemporary art platform. I know that there's a feeling of inaccessibility and an intimidation factor that people have in the contemporary art world. People don't feel comfortable walking into my gallery necessarily because they, you know, we speak our own language. There's a price point to it. People don't always feel like it's for them. And we have an opportunity here through platforms like Cardano to create dialogue where that inaccessibility starts to fade away. But I also see it in the NFT platform too, because you know, you guys have your own dialogue, you have your own verbiage around this languaging, and it can feel inaccessible to people who might not know how to buy an NFT online. So, you know, there's these kind of similarities between what are the best and worst things of the art world and probably what are the best and worst things of the NFT world. You know, we look at commodification in the contemporary art world as kind of this predatory investment, and I know that there's those same problems that we have in the NFT world.
WAGMI. Do you know the definition?
Please.
We are going to make it.
There you go.
So taking you to school there already, I'm going to learn some more from you. Brendan, any thoughts or deviations away from Doug's definition?
No, I like that at all, and a lot. I guess my mini space, which feels like a large space within that contemporary art, is my genre is art of the everyday. And my whole goal was to make art out of overlooked or, you know, commonplace things. And whether that was Walmart, and then I started doing paintings about social media, which, quite frankly, I find as compelling and baffling as I did Walmart. And when I came across Cardano, and I had this friend who has a, you know, large brain, and no one I knew could figure out how to mint an NFT, but he was like, I think I can do it. And he spent 9 days drilling down and figuring out. This was like 2 weeks after native tokens were available, tax day in 2021, that I put out my first NFT, and Wes bought my first digital NFT. And this has kind of been my personal history in the art world, is half the people who have bought my paintings spend $100,000 every year on art, and the other half had never bought a painting before. So I felt that that was like a perfect beginning for that Shelley NFT that I did. And so I don't know if that leads us to where, how does that affect your question to him before was, how do you think this is going to affect the art world? And
you know, there's no simple answer to that, but I think the biggest way that this is going to affect is through authenticity. I think the idea of us being able to have a little more transparency with ownership and authenticity is really going to be the big thing that comes across from how it affects contemporary art.
I think from the collector side, just having more involvement within the actual creative process, and then how you can turn that piece of art into almost an experience, almost as if it's a game. I'm sure it does exist in the traditional world a bit, but you know, my experience collecting art is more so not walking into art stores. I started buying physical artwork on the internet. I've definitely had that feeling of like, this place is not for me, while walking through and, you know, doing some window shopping in New York City. Yet you don't really get that barrier while shopping online. I think the problem is I don't have a big enough house to put all these, you know, posters that are in tubes up on the walls. And so that's where, you know, the introduction of NFTs allowed me to recognize, well, I can continue to collect and not fill my parents' and sisters' houses up with artwork. And then at that point, having these interactive experiences, Zhang Wan's first collection was actually, it's called The Celestial Burial of an Artist. And the experience is almost an honoring to a performance art piece that he did in the, I think the early 2000s in New York City. He dressed up as this big beef man. You may have noticed it on the flat panels. So 20 years later or more, he kind of recreated this ability to play a video game where a beef man's up on the screen, a pixelated version, and you have this little pigeon, that's the mouse cursor, and you get to pick away pixels on Beef Man. From that, you get to mint your game result. And those who played the game over 10 times, I believe, were then entered in to get a mosaic of all of those one-of-one pixelated game results into a mosaic that's a greater version of Zhang Wan and Beef Man And then from there, all of the wallet addresses, and based on who holds the greatest amount of pieces, which was myself, gets gifted that one of one, or at least one of the 8 editions that was created, that mosaic. So having that type of collector experience, that it's very rewarding, and then having that pathway to the artist, me being able to find Zhengwan's director of blockchain, DM him on Twitter, and now all of a sudden I'm working with the studio. So I don't know a more accessible way to an artist other than stalking them in person or calling them on the phone a bunch of times. This actually builds trust, I think, and shows that you have skin in the game before approaching these folks. Zhengwan said that he treats his collectors like parents, and he told me that, and it felt good, I think, after a year of collecting his art and really diving in and trying to understand what it's all about, and then also doing research as to, there is an investment perspective to this as to how I believe those pieces will do. So I really think collector experience is something that will get optimized as traditional artists understand the potential.
Well, and I've heard a quote that I think it's really interesting, because you're talking about how you're able to kind of engage with that work, right? So at some point or another, I really feel like collectors stop collecting individual artworks and they start collecting artists. They started collecting experiences. And I think that's really important to the way that you end up connecting with the artwork. There was a quote, and I'm trying to think of who it was by, where it was saying, stop looking at art as an object and start looking at it as a trigger for an experience. And I feel like that's one thing that's really exciting about this platform, is that it creates all of these entry points for us to have these experiences, and the artist can have as little or as much feedback in that experience as possible.
One thing I was thinking about scaling back, I have a friend who's a commercial real estate investor, and he's always targeted neighborhoods where artists have gone into these shitty neighborhoods and cleaned them up, and he invests when the artists are there, and then he ends up selling making a lot of money based on that. And so I don't know if this is an apocryphal story, but I heard that the first business done on the internet was a novelist wrote a novel and got 100,000 people to spend $1 on it. And if artists have gone to, NFT is a form of digital real estate. And the fact that the artists have sort of paved the way for this whole new smart contract arena doesn't surprise me based on how we've done things in the past. But the thing that drew me into Cardano in particular is, I had all these friends saying, you're missing the boat. You need to jump in on this OpenSea and Ethereum, and what are you doing? And I had a collector who was a Bitcoin maximalist. I still see that email from 2011 where he said, I can get you 800 Bitcoin for this painting. I know you think you need the $1,500, but this reality of Ethereum was so expensive, and so I was sitting there, just practicality, and I have money, but the notion of I'm going to spend hundreds of dollars to park JPEGs somewhere, that was hard for me to get into. And what I found appealing of Cardano is that we didn't yet replicate the exact problems that the contemporary art world has or the contemporary auction houses have. And Ethereum had the gatekeepers all set up. If you dropped with this, you made money. If you didn't, no one knew you existed.
Needle in a haystack. Whereas Cardano has the first mover advantage, especially if your vertical of the art world has yet to join it, and you may or may not be one of the first artist to partake and bring on a new audience. And of course, the risk of not having to pay an insane amount of money on gas fees. Or putting you're an investor in a standpoint where in a place where they have to spend what, like 20% of the cost of the actual piece itself on a transaction fee. I've unfortunately fallen victim to that many times, and maybe some of those don't have any value anymore, and maybe there was a value to be made, but from a Cardano standpoint, I think the community as well has a lot of new opportunity to see how we react to these artists onboarding, while we haven't entered this insane bull run state that Ethereum had, where there's gatekeepers, there's people that minted NFTs for $75, and the next thing you know, they have $1 million of ape JPEGs, and now they're kind of the anointers of who's biggest and best, and the gatekeepers, because you have to have that PFP to enter the Discord and get the knowledge. So I really hope that Cardano doesn't go in that direction. I think some of those elements are like completely inevitable, but this is a new beginning, and I think having an understanding before everything hits us like a tidal wave, and we do see a lot of mass adoption and onboarding from the traditional art world, we'll all have hopefully a better understanding. And right now, I feel like Cardano is a little bit of kumbaya in the NFT community. It's just a matter of when the competition's going to bubble, and we're going to get that side that ETH has and has kind of become overtaken by. And I think that kind of relates to that window shopping experience. There's plenty of ETH NFTs that I'd love to have mint, but they were doing the other side minting, and gas was $600. And for those unfortunate artists that didn't realize that was happening, good luck minting out on your project.
Well, and it's such an interesting space too, and I think about it within the contemporary art realm as like, how is the medium part of the message? I've had, so I also host a podcast, and I've had hundreds of artists reach out to me and ask about how they should be positioning themselves, in the NFT market. And a lot of my answer has been, well, is it something that's part of the way that you express yourself through the medium? Is it something that feels authentic to your art practice? And if it's not hitting for you there, then are you really just trying to get onboarded to something because you see it as some way for an easy cash grab? And I think a lot of artists really did do that. A friend of mine minted and sold Beeple's first 2 NFTs about 6 or 8 months before his $69 million auction record. The first one sold for like $200 and some, and the second one sold for like $500 and something. And I think when that happened, everybody looked on and said, oh my gosh, this is such an incredible part of the art market, or just this kind of market in general, and how do we get into it? And going back to this way of authentically showing your work within it, I think that's incredibly important. One of my artists who, we're working on an NFT project now, he does these layered paintings where he takes a subject matter like Kanye West or Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he does a Google image search and paints the first 100 images that come up on Google on top of each other. And then he carves into the painting to reveal this excavation of 100 layers of imagery. But the underlayers only exist on the paintings that he takes photos of. And it becomes this memory. It becomes erasure as part of his conceptual process, and also the way that patterns reveal themselves as he carves into the work. So an NFT that goes with each one of those paintings, that's kind of the underlayers revealing themselves, makes a lot of sense, and it's something that he can pay, sell with the actual painting as part of the authentication. And for me, that makes a lot of sense. It feels in conversation with his current practice. It feels like another added layer that is giving not just depth to the physical one, but also more insight and more understanding of the artist's practice. And and creating that connection with what the concepts are.
Brendan, have you thought much on gamification of your pieces and burns, merges?
Well, I think part of the challenge when I see many artists go to NFTs is they start making art that they think looks like NFTs, that looks like NFTs that are selling.
Definitely.
And it's very hard for an artist to stick to, do what Duchamp's comment of, I do what amuses me. Like, do what really amuses me, not what you think amuses other people. And that's a hard thing to stay true to, because I may have been the first quote unquote professional artist to mint on Cardano. I might have made the least amount of money of any of those artists who have minted on Cardano. Like, I've met tons of people who've made, and I find it fascinating. And I just, maybe it's timing, maybe that's a question that artists are regularly asking themselves of, is there a space for me here? And if not here, where? And I know I'm compelled to do what I do, but, wow, like, am I going to join the stadium of, like, Yankee Stadium? You could fill all the artists in New York with Yankee Stadium, and all of them are shouting, "Look at me." And, like, do I want to be another one of those people shouting, "Please look at me"? Like, that's fucking exhausting. It's hard to do work and make the fanfare around the quote unquote community, the Reddit, the Discord, all that stuff is that's actually the role that gallerists used to play. They created that buffer for the community of money and appreciation, and so that the artist could actually just make the work. And now that promotion is irrevocably part of it. It's minted in the smart contract of.
Yeah, there's collaboration needed, I think, from the Web3 audience and the traditional art world for the collector group to come together. So, like, for instance, on your side, I remember the minute I found out about CardanoArt.io, Brendan's website where you can mint pieces from a few different artists. We had a call with Rand and I, and we went to the Laramie, Wyoming summit with business cards that linked to both our Stake Pools website as well as your art website. And we were, like, pushing it really hard, trying to get collectors. And I think that's the type of collaboration that we get with, whether it be from the artist reaching out to a collector or the collector reaching out to an artist, and being able to basically merge those two worlds together to gain, I don't know what the numbers would be, but maybe half of the traditional collector audience from that artist that they already have, bringing them over to Web3, and then bringing Web3 over to the traditional art. And that's quite a nice blend of collectors right there. Some that are learning, some that are experienced with clicking a lot of buttons on computer screens and approving transactions. And I think from that, it makes for a great community of people educating each other and asking questions. And with all that, there's more passion, I think, generated around the art and the appreciation towards the artist. So I think with that, it's a matter of, the audience and of the collectors is probably going to change quite a bit once you jump into NFTs compared to your traditional collectors that you've had for decades. So that's something that you'll have to adjust to. So there's WAGME, and there's GM, GN, good morning, good night. All the degenerate Web3 NFT lingo. You'll be able to translate that at some point, I think.
I have no idea what that is. So it was funny when I was asked to be on this panel. I know a fair amount of contemporary art, but within the NFT realm, within the tech realm of it, for me, it's also like there's so much overlap, and it surprises me too, like how again, like we're talking about inaccessibility and understanding of formats and languaging and the way that we talk about stuff and how that creates barriers or creates ways of accessibility for it. And that's where it's exciting to me to see how these intersections of these different platforms that have these troubles communicating outside of it can start engaging. You were talking about kind of these gatekeepers. And for me, like, I know that, I've been considered a gatekeeper because what I do is a lot of vetting of artists. So for the last 20 years of my life, that's what I do every day is I look at artwork. I look at artwork, and then I say, you know what, these artists are the ones that I want to support with my own finances, with the gallery's time, because I think the statements that they're making, the type of work they're producing is exciting to me. And that's always been my high watermark, is not what anybody else is going to do with it, not what anybody else thinks of the artwork, but is it something that speaks to me, something that's getting me excited about it. And that's where, within this whole realm, I've spent a lot of time kind of on the sidelines observing it, because I've heard so much noise from it as well. It's been like trying to get a drink from a fire hose at times, because there's been so much conversation. Everybody has looked at the NFT market from all these different sidelines, and again, it starts to get into this commodification of it too, which I know so many artists are out there who think that that's like the worst part of their own art practice, is the commodification of it. They don't want to be a part of the selling of the artwork. They don't want to negotiate. They don't want to talk about discounting or have those financial conversations about the work. They want to create the work, communicate with people, and see where that lands. And I feel like this is another way of creating barriers at times, but also dissolving those barriers. And so to hear about like how certain launches on NFT, I feel like there's those same type of gatekeepers, or the same type of people that are vetting. You were talking about getting lost in the sea of other NFTs, and how do you end up, really not being one of the people in the stadium shouting? Do you guys feel that this type of platform has really changed that accessibility of the artwork, or that kind of vetting nature of what are the really interesting, strong projects? Or is it stuff that there are gatekeepers that have already been telling you or promoting or have the finances to put that in front of you in the same way that maybe the art world does?
Yeah, the hype can be generated by those gatekeepers to the point where the impulse is almost impossible to ignore on making a ton of money off of JPEGs, right? It's almost impossible not to dabble and try to flip JPEGs.
Are you talking from experience?
Yes, but I think the more enjoyable collector experience overall is when you buy something because you like it and it speaks to you. It hurts a lot less when price goes down.
So one of the things about the idea of gatekeepers and artists are regularly railing on their resentment about, and part of it, quite frankly, is you're just not invited to this party that other people seem to be having, and I might feel differently about the gatekeeper if he invited me.
Yeah.
And so the comedy of I think there's a space on particularly Cardano, but where everybody has access and everybody can do the version of the OpenSea. But I do think there is a role for tastemakers and gatekeepers to coal to drink from the fire hose and pull out these few to help a lot of people who aren't willing to spend that much time culling through, you know, the Walmart of every piece of art out there, you know, every SKU, you know, like it's just too much. And that, I think there will always be a space for the gatekeeper, and there will always be a space for, you know, everybody can have their book published on Amazon. That doesn't mean anybody's going to ever see it or buy it, but everybody can have their art minted into an NFT just like they can publish a book on Amazon.
This discussion's been super enjoyable. It's been over a year in the making, I think, for this all to come together and for us to get on stage. Definitely recommend, if you have yet to take a look at the Neiman Army, to go take a walk around. Brendan, I believe your art's already wrapped up for the day,
There's
or
a
no?
couple things.
In the exhibitor hall, Brendan's doing live paintings. I think all of this is completely unavoidable to ignore. And then from Zheng Wan's studio, you can join their Discord and learn more about Space Flower. Doug, I believe Victor's still showing at K Contemporary through the month.
Through next week. So the 22nd is the last time. We have a solo exhibition right now from Victor. It's an extension of his recent museum show in Slovakia. That was 30,000 square feet of gallery space at the Danubiana Museum. And please, there is a whitelist for Victor's upcoming NFT drop on Cardano, which is accessible through Rare Bloom.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.